I've been speaking at length to Michelle O'Neill tonight, and I began by asking her about the latest reports of divisions within the executive.
I think that it's unfortunate sometimes that it be presented as that's, for example, it's myself against Arlene or myself, Sinn Féin against the DUP, or even London versus Dublin. I'm following the World Health Organization's advice. I'm following the European Centre for Disease Control's advice. I'm following best practice of examples of other countries. I am making that point internally in the executive, but the executive hasn't been quick enough to respond. I suppose, to explain our system of governance, we're not like any other government insofar as we have 5 parties around the executive table. Every minister has their own responsibility for their own department. However, in this case, where we're responding to a global crisis, people can't act as normal. The executive can't act as normal, and individual ministers can't act as normal. I made the case to ministers privately around the issue of schools that they should have closed sooner. I made the case, and I continue to make the case, that we need to do more testing, making sure our healthcare staff are tested quicker, making sure we're doing a lot more of that. We need to be doing more in terms of PPE. I've made those issues privately, but whenever I feel like things aren't being moved on, then that's where I have to say it. I have an obligation as elected representative and as a leader to call things out, but I've also been very constructive. I've made my case.
It's very easy, with respect, Deputy First Minister, to stand up and call other people out and say they're not reacting quickly enough to events. But it's a lot more complicated than that. I mean, Robin Swan has said he wants more testing, he wants more PPE. He's the person dealing with it. The reality is it's not easy to get the PPE kit because there's a global shortage, and it's not easy to get the additional tests because there's a global shortage of those as well.
I know, but let's examine some of the facts. And I want to be constructive, and I will continue to work with Robin, but let's examine some of the facts. Slavishly following the Boris Johnson model, which has been too slow to act, has meant that we are not as prepared as what we could be at this moment in time. Allowing, for example, today it's been revealed that the Rondox deal that was done with the British government means that the British government will take all of the testing kits from Rondox over to Britain, and then we'll have to wait in the queue to get some tests back. Is that an acceptable situation? No, I don't think so. I want unity in the executive. I want to be able to stand up on a platform with my fellow colleagues in the executive on a unified front, but I'm quite sure the public would much prefer that I try to shape things into the way that they should be, which is to follow the World Health Organization's advice, which is to do more testing. I mean, they couldn't be more clear whenever they talked about test. We need community testing. We need to make sure we do that. And I work really with Robin. I work really hard every day to make sure we get to the point where we actually have more tests in place and that we have the PPE. Conor Murphy is actually working with Robin very closely now to try and procure more PPE because our staff need to be protected. We have Robin on one hand saying that we have adequate supply at this moment in time of protection equipment. However, that's not the reality on the ground. I have spoke to many nurses and to doctors this week who have told me they don't have scrubs. They are fearful to go to work. These are people who we are going to be relying on through the most difficult of times that we've ever been through. And these people are afraid to go to work. So that's not acceptable.
You're saying quite openly here on this programme tonight that in your view, Robin Swan and the Health Department have been too slow to act?
Yes, that is my view. However, what I would want to say to the public is that we are where we are now, and we have to do everything to make sure we respond in the best way that we can. So Conor Murphy is working with Robin Swan, with the Department of Health, to make sure we chase down every single supply potential that we have. We're working across the island now with a memorandum of understanding being signed between the 2 chief medical officers, and one of the areas they're looking at is how can we procure together. We're chasing every source, and I want the public and I want the healthcare workers to know that we are working together and we are going to do everything we can to make sure that they are protected to do their jobs. I just think that the public need that reassurance. I want them to know that. But I'm also just equally making the point that I have made these arguments privately, and I feel it's my moral duty, given the severity of the situation that we're dealing with, that I have to say those things whenever I think that they're not right.
Well, how is it a collective approach to come onto a programme like this, Deputy First Minister, and say you believe that effectively the Health Minister has been asleep at the wheel? Do you have confidence in Robin Swan to continue doing the job of Health Minister?
Well, I think we have to all work our way through this pandemic. We all have to work together, and I'll continue to work with Robin through this. I think he's got a very difficult job. I think that there's no doubt about that.
And you're not making it any easier for him?
Well, I think, you see, you're pitting this as me against Robin. This is about me standing up and standing very firmly alongside the World Health Organization's advice. This is me standing very firmly alongside the best examples across the world. This is me saying to slavishly follow the British policy which has been too slow to act. I mean, that's not a secret. That's not just my assertion. That's the assertion of most people across the globe right now. And Boris Johnson has now just recently in the last 24 hours realised that his policy has been flawed, and he's now moving towards more testing. So I think that our conversation tonight is best focused on in terms of telling the public that we are doing everything that we can to secure more PPE, that we're going to make sure that and things are moving in. But things are moving in a better direction in terms of testing, where we now see that we're looking towards using DVA centres, direct driver vehicles and centres, in terms of getting more testing centres up and running. We've moved quite substantially in terms of where we were in testing to where we are today. And Robin has committed to bringing forward plans that's actually going to look at ramping that up even more further. So we're moving in the right direction. So I just think it's important that we've said those things also.
But let me just clarify one point, because you didn't directly answer my question. Does Robin Swan have your full confidence to continue as Health Minister?
I think we're in the middle of a pandemic, Mark, and I think that we have to continue to work together. I will continue to work with Robin. I think he has been too slow to act, but I think that we have to work our way through what is going to be even more difficult days in the time ahead. And this is not a time for calling for anybody's head or any of those things. I think it's important that we continue to work together through this crisis, and I will work with Robin every day, all night, to do the very best thing, because I don't misdoubt.
With respect, that is less than a ringing endorsement.
No, but I want to say this very clearly. I don't for 1 second doubt anybody's motivation other than that want to save lives. Robin wants to save every life that he can. He wants to do his very, very best, and I'm going to work with him to make sure that we do that. That's our executive priority, to save lives, and we need to work our way through this as best we can.
I just wonder if this is the mature way to approach this. Surely the best way to deal with this is to sit down around the table and to hammer out practical, workable solutions to these very difficult issues, and then to communicate that to the public with one agreed executive message. Would that not be a better way of doing things than coming onto The View and saying that the Health Minister and his department have been too slow to act? What kind of message does that send out to people who are worried tonight about themselves and their family members, that COVID-19 is a disease which could claim maybe as many as 3,000 lives in Northern Ireland, and you're saying that the Health Minister isn't doing his job as well as you would like him to?
Mark, I have a moral duty. I have a duty as a political leader to say whenever I don't think something's right. That does not mean that we can't work together. That does not mean that I don't work all day, every day, to work with Robin Swan and the other executive colleagues to do everything we can. I am following the World Health Organization's advice. I mean, that's what I am doing. And I think it's important that the public hear that the executive are working together, that we are doing everything that we can do more testing, that we can improve the picture in terms of PPE. That's the message which the public should hear tonight. And I will give the public my commitment as joint head of government to do absolutely everything I can to make sure we protect our people as best we can in the most challenging of circumstances that none of us have ever been before. None of us have ever been here before. And our recent modelling shows, as you have said, that potentially up to 3,000 people could die. So our job is to make sure that we minimise that as best we can. I think that there's been amazing work done across the executive, across all government departments in terms of being able to respond to the crisis. And we'll continue to do that as we work our way through the most challenging of times.
The Health Minister and the Health Department would say that they are acting on the very best medical and scientific advice available in the United Kingdom. What I want to ask you is, who is actually dealing with this pandemic on behalf of the people of Northern Ireland? Is it you and Arlene Foster? Is it the Health Minister? Is it the Chief Medical Officer? Or is it a combination of the above?
Well, it's obviously a combination of the above. I mean, Robin Swan is the Health Minister. He has autonomy in his department. He has the ability to take decisions. None of us have ever been here before, Mark. I keep saying that. We're in a global pandemic. The executive have never responded to a crisis like this before. Governments across the world have never responded to a crisis like this before. I think we're doing our very best to work together and to work our way through it as best that we can.
It's very easy, though, to stand up at a news conference, isn't it, and to say, I think we should be doing more and we should be doing it faster as far as PPE is concerned, as far as ventilators are concerned, as far as testing is concerned. It's Robin Swan who's actually got to deal with that with his officials on a day-to-day basis. He's actually got the challenge of translating that into policy. I mean, you know, some people might accuse you of playing to the gallery in these circumstances. You're saying what the public wants to hear, but you're not actually having to do the hard work to deliver what you say needs to be done. And in the meantime, the public is getting a message of nobody quite being in control of the ship.
Well, I think that I don't think it's easy to stand up and say whenever you have a difference of opinion. I know that people would like to see a unified front, but I'm quite sure people would much prefer that at the end of the day, that lives are saved. I'm working around the clock, Mark. I am working, and the executive team are working around the clock to do everything we can to work together, to take the right decisions. It doesn't just fall on Robin Swan. I have said from day one, I will stand on every platform with him, as long as I am able to be part of the decisions that he is taking, as long as I am able to input into that, as long as that the views that I express are taken on board, I will continue to do that. It is not easy to call things out whenever you think something wrong, but this is far too serious. This is far too serious. This is not about party politics. This is about what is the best advice. The World Health Organization have very clearly said, test, test, test. But this is about trying to save as many lives as we possibly can. We have seen significant improvement, and we are going in the right direction. And I will continue to work with all the other ministers, making sure that we do absolutely everything that we can to get ourselves through this. The public should be assured that the executive is working together in all of these things. There's a difference in emphasis, and I think the people need to hear that very clearly. We are working together. We meet every morning, myself, Arlene Foster.
You've made that point already. Would it not be more sensible, Michelle O'Neill, instead of criticising Robin Swan and the Health Department, would it not make more sense for you to put your shoulder to the wheel and for you and Arlene Foster to present a united front with Conor Murphy and Robin Swan, and to knock on Boris Johnson's door and to make it abundantly clear that you're not happy with the current procurement situation and that Northern Ireland deserves more of its fair share, if you like, of PPE equipment, for example? That's the way to approach it, rather than standing up in a news conference and simply saying other people aren't doing enough.
You see, I think, with all due respect, Mark, I think you're failing to get the point. What I am saying is that I think that the system or the policy that's been carried through by the British government has been flawed. It's been fundamentally flawed from the start. Do you wish me to go to a press conference every day and not say what I actually think? Would you prefer that I presented a false account of how things actually are? I am merely pointing out, these are the difficulties, these are the challenges, and here's what I'm doing. I am working around the clock to try to provide the solutions to all these things. I will work with every government minister and continue to do so, because that is my job. I take my job very, very seriously. That also includes providing the unified front as much as we possibly can, but it also means that you need to say, whenever something isn't right, you try to fix it. So I think that we have had some success in trying to fix things, albeit slower than what I would have liked, but we have made some success in trying to fix the picture and actually do things better. We have much, much more ahead of us. I want to continue to work with the executive to do everything we can to do right by people. That's my moral compass.
What comfort tonight, after this conversation, can you honestly give people watching this interview that the politicians they've elected are working hard to put their differences aside to serve all our interests at a very difficult time as best they can?
I think people should be very assured that we are working round the clock and we are working together. People should be very assured that the executive is doing absolutely everything that it can to work our way through what is the most challenging of circumstances. I know people are frightened. We all have families. Everybody feels it. The health service staff are frightened. The staff that I've spoken to are frightened. We all know that. We all have families also. So I can tell everybody that the executive collectively will continue to do right by them. We'll continue to work for them day and night, and we'll continue to get us through this. And we will come out the other side of this, and we'll have a society to build. But a lot of people are going to lose their loved ones, and we need to make sure that we're there to support people through the most challenging of times. And I am very confident that this executive can do that.
And we all accept, I hope it's taken as read, that we all accept that you've got a very difficult job to do and that you and others are doing it to the best of your ability. But I just wonder if, as the situation gets more difficult and as more people perhaps are hospitalised and as the daily death toll increases, as we are told that it inevitably will, we will see more of those differences between the politicians being set aside and a more collegiate approach on behalf of everybody in Northern Ireland to actually deal with this problem as best you can.
Of course we will continue to work together, Mark, and we have many more things that unite us than we actually disagree on. It's natural in any five-party executive that you're going to have differences of opinion, differences in emphasis, but people should be very assured that this executive is working collectively together round the clock to do the right thing for the public. That's what we're elected to do, and I'm very confident that's what we're all working really hard at doing.
OK, we will leave it there. Michelle O'Neill, thanks very much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you.